If you are a independent restaurant owner looking for the right investor to start growing your restaurant group, I've got just the person you need to learn from on the show today. In the years since 2010, when Juan Padro and his partners opened their first restaurant, Highland Tap and Burger, the Culinary Creative Group has undergone remarkable expansion under Juan's leadership, opening 20 restaurants, bars, and coffee shops across Denver and New Orleans. The Culinary Creative Group has received multiple local and national Best Restaurant Awards, as well as being named Best of and Hottest Restaurants lists. In late 2023, the Michelin Guide awarded the prestigious Bib Gourmand to two Culinary Creative Group restaurants, Ashkara and Mr. Oso. Juan has a BA in history from the University of Massachusetts and a passion for creating jobs, investing in people, developing his staff, and building businesses that truly impact communities. He has cultivated strong relationships in the local business and nonprofit communities, and Juan is proud to work with incredible humanitarians and to have the opportunity to support their efforts, both locally and internationally. Juan was recently nominated to the HR Power List of 10 founders and entrepreneurs changing the restaurant industry. We have an action-packed, full of value episode for you today. Today, we are going to talk about how to know if and when your business is scalable and how to prepare for growth, how to find the right investor for your restaurant, what a great investment deal looks like for you and some pitfalls to avoid, how to diversify your board of directors, and how to cultivate culture and develop your team through core values. Welcome to the No Hesitations podcast, the show where restaurant leaders learn tools, tactics, and habits from the world's greatest operators. I am your host, Kristen Marvin with Solutions by Kristen. I've spent the last 2 decades in the restaurant industry and now partner with restaurant owners to develop their leaders and scale their businesses without wasting time and energy so they can achieve work-life balance and make more money. You can now engage with me on the show and share topics you'd like to hear about, leadership lessons you want to learn, and any feedback that you have. Simply click the link at the top of the show notes, and I'll give you a shout out on a future episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to connecting. Hi, Juan. Thanks so much for being here. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. It's
Absolutely.
nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you too. I just want to say, congratulations on obviously all your success. Your brand, Culinary Creative, your group has been one of our favorites. Tyler and I's favorites over the years, and have just been super excited to see the growth and excited to share with the listeners today what your growth strategy's been. How you've been able to financially secure investors and aid in your growth. And share some of the lessons that you've learned along the way that can help anybody who's interested in really scaling do so in a really sustainable way. So thank you so much for being here. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. So
Good.
So we started in 2010 with Highland Tap and Burger in North Denver. Burgers, beers, community eatery. It was an emerging a neighborhood that was going through some transition. Today I've grown to 21 stores, 18 in Denver, 3 in New Orleans. We've got about 12 under construction, including 4 at the airport, so we've gotten into some licensing deals. Along the way, I've done some consulting. Certainly have fallen on our faces, many times and learned a lot. And I think we've, been able to come out the other side all right, and we're still learning. So that never stops. And we're a very unique group. We've got 14 concepts in 21 stores. So, you have to be a special type of crazy to do that. Typically, you find a concept or two that are working and you lean into them. And for us, we just happen to be really good at conceptual development. And so, but we are at the point now today where, we've sort of restructured our company and we're identifying concepts that we believe are local, regional, and national concepts. And so we'll have different strategies for all of those.
That's awesome. Juan, will
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about the different concepts that you have in your group?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we started out with burgers and beers and, elevated American, kind of bar food. And we've got 4 of those stores. They're the Tap and Burgers. And, really without Highland Tap, none of this other stuff would be possible. But we moved forward and worked on a project called Old Major, which was, so 2010, we opened Highland. 2012, we opened Old Major, which was on the other side of the spectrum. That was had a butchery program, a charcuterie program, had a high-end wine program. Was really a completely different business. We got out of that deal in 2014, and we had tons of lessons learned there. I would say the biggest one was, not all partnerships are going to work, and I think you have to be selective about who you're going to be a partner with. And that's not to say our partner was a bad person or anything like that. I don't think so. I think just generally, you have to have values aligned, and it's perfectly all right to have different values. So we sort of learned that lesson there. In 2000, that year, we also partnered with Max McKissick, who was an incredible chef with the Squeaky Bean, and so Old Major and Squeaky Bean. That was, I believe, the first time Denver ever had 2 restaurants on Bon Appetit's top 50 in America, and so it was a really important year for the culinary scene in Denver, which was certainly not on the national radar at that point in time. So obviously, as Denver had explosive growth and people were coming in from the coasts. The palates were a little bit more diverse. People say sophisticated. I'm not sure that's true. I mean, I think Denver's pretty, has a lot of highly educated, sophisticated people. And so I think it's unfair to label a New Yorker or a San Francisco guy, as more sophisticated. It's just different.
Yeah.
And so, I think diversity plays, a big part of that. And so, the diversity of the cities are reflective of, the cuisine is reflective of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, from there we opened up Bardo, which, I would say, I mean, you've certainly spent plenty of time in Bardo.
Yes. My second home.
That's right. And, Bardo, is probably what our group is most closely associated with, still to this day. And, obviously, Max is, again, just a brilliant chef. And he developed Carrie Baird, who ended up as a finalist on Top Chef. And so we got a lot of national attention at that point in time for that. And we started to, kind of continue to grow with more taps and started to get into consulting. And we did 7908 in Aspen and Main Shack and Sophia in New Orleans, which we were a partner in. But
Juan, would you talk a little bit about why you decided to go out of Denver into New Orleans specifically?
Yeah. So I got a call from one of my investors, and he said, "Hey, listen," he's a money manager for UBS, and he said, and this is a friends and family investor, by the way, certainly not institutional money or anything. And he said, "Would you mind taking a call?" One of the families that I manage their portfolio, they have a son who's in the club business in New Orleans and wants to start moving away from that into more of the restaurant world. And I think he's got a pretty sophisticated palate. Grew up between like LA, Aspen, New Orleans, and DC. Father wrote The Exorcist. So pretty interesting guy. And he was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and was training in Colorado and kind of got grounded in Denver, Googled best Italian, ended up at Bardo and fell in love with it. And said, we don't have anything like that in New Orleans. Our Italian food is a little bit more like Sardinian and Cajun hybrid Italian American type stuff. And Bardo is very, as you know, seafood and vegetable forward and lighter. And I took the call and we talked and really liked the guy and He came up the next day, actually. He just got on a plane, and what was supposed to be an hour meeting turned into an entire evening. As you know, in our industry, that can happen.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, at that point, we knew that, we liked the guy enough that, we would be willing to license, our concept to him.
Got it.
It took so long to get that thing off the ground in New Orleans with all the political hoops that you had to go through. And Billy's parents were really close with Sophia Loren. And so that's why the restaurant is called Sophia.
Okay.
To note to her. And it's really remarkable. There were all these rumors about like love triangles and the tabloids and all this kind of stuff. So we have a lot of really cool content around that. But Sophia actually won Restaurant of the Year in New Orleans, swept every publication.
Oh, nice.
So it's the second iteration of Bardot. And the final piece to that puzzle was a chef and an operator. And Peter Gordon, who ran restaurants at a prominent group in Colorado, and his wife Talia, who's an Italian and a really good cook. So they wanted to move to New Orleans. So it was perfect because they understood our culture, and they certainly had spent a lot of time at Bardot, and they've done a good job with Sophia down there. She's done an especially great job. So
that's great. I love it. Will you talk a little bit about, I mean, you've got so many different concepts, right? You mentioned a few of them. You've got, now you've got really high-end sushi. You've got, high-end steak. You've got so many great concepts, coffee, right? You've got your cocktail bar and Cherry Creek. Will you talk a little bit about the thought process of why you continue to open so many different concepts? And then at what point did you say, this is the one or two that I'm going to scale? Like, how did you make that decision?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question because the way we built our business is certainly, I wouldn't recommend following our script in terms of all the concepts. It's very risky.
Yeah.
And as you get bigger, your mistakes are much more expensive. But we're fortunate, that we were able to do it, and we gained probably greater credibility because we were able to do it, because it's next to impossible to do. But I was a headhunter in the late 90s during the dot-com era, and a very similar type situation where all these like young entrepreneurs had these incredible ideas when the people started talking about the World Wide Web and e-commerce and all of that type of stuff. So the problem was that the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars that were going into investing in these companies, these guys were putting money in with young kids. A lot of them didn't even have college degrees. But they knew the modern development languages, and they were progressive in thought from a business perspective. And so the investment banks and the venture capitalists and the angel investors just started pouring money into Silicon Valley and Silicon Alley in New York and the Boston Cambridge corridor. And in order to de-risk, they created incubators. And what the incubators did was, it really reduced their risk, because all of the stuff that a 22-year-old founder of, let's say ragingbull.com, which was basically taking Wall Street Journal and putting it online, and selling advertising and all that type of stuff, was wildly popular. But the kid, really, I think his girlfriend might have been 18 years old when they were interviewing like all these C-level execs in custom suits from New York and Boston to run their company. That kid, did not have experience in sales and marketing and anything administrative. Did not have set up an office. Just all the stuff that goes along with business that you don't read about because it's not sexy. Mm-hmm. But what he could do is he could code, and he knew the modern development languages. So these guys, they go into an incubator, and the incubator takes care of all the peripheral stuff, and they focus on that, and they become millionaires and they grow. So we sort of do that with artists. So I would say we're an incubator of artists. We're an equitable business. That's very important to us. And when our creatives create a concept that we work on together and we refine and make it financially viable, they get equity, and they're partners. And so we build around that. And that's what's allowed us to do so many concepts, because we have our creatives that are very invested in it, because it is really their concept with our structure.
Mm-hmm. Got
So
it.
that's why we've been able to pull that off.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be willing to give something up to do the conceptual development at the clip we were doing it at.
Yeah, that's awesome.
As we grew, to answer your other question,
Mm-hmm.
some concepts just outperform others financially. And, when you go out looking for capital, at first, it's mostly like friends and family. You're just kind of cutting and pasting and getting things open. And so, you'll take tiny investments, bigger investments, mom, dad, cousin, friend, girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, whatever, whoever wanted to put it in, we got them open. But as we started to get a little bit bigger, we were getting, people were like, wow, these guys are doing really well. I want to be a part of it, because so it's like almost investing in an independent film. I want to be a producer of a movie. Well, a lot of people want to be parts of restaurants, bars, things like that. It's sexy. So we started taking in bigger investment dollars. And then in like 2020, we restructured the company into a C Corp. And we've got a pretty complex structure, beyond the C Corp, but we raise money into that entity today. And that money flows down through the brand levels and the store levels. And then, now we're at the point where we've got, we're going to have 5 Mr. Rossos. We have 4 Tappin' Burgers. We're going to have 5 Avianos. And when you're starting to prove concept like that, people get very interested in peeling those concepts out and growing them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a different type of money, right?
Sure.
So then you're talking about like institutional money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole different set of rules with that. And so we've avoided institutional money to date because we wanted to maintain control. Once you start taking that, you're taking bigger dollars, and rightfully so. People have restrictions on those dollars, and those institutions, whether they're family offices or or PE firms or whatever. I mean, they have a fiduciary duty to their clients to put their money in a good place. And so again, we're not really ready. We're not quite ready to do that yet, but that's the next phase as we go out and we say, hey, Mr. Rosso, how do we get Mr. Rosso from 5 to 20?
Sure.
So, yeah.
Hi, everybody. We're taking a quick break to offer you an exciting opportunity. If you're a restaurant owner or manager looking to enhance your leadership skills, I invite you to join my 12-day leadership challenge. In just 12 days, you'll receive a guided packet with actionable strategies to transform your leadership in less than 5 minutes a day. Join the challenge and the community and grab your copy at kristenmarvin.com/12 days. Now let's get back to the show.
Howdy, listener. Are you also a podcaster seeking to stand out in the crowded audio landscape? I'm here to help. L. Connor Voice, LLC offers top-tier audio engineering, meticulous content management, and more, all tailored to save you time and elevate your podcast to new heights of professionalism. With L. Connor Voice, you can focus on what you do best, creating captivating content, while I handle the rest. Say goodbye to hours spent tweaking audio levels and managing uploads. I ensure your podcast shines with polished sound quality and seamless delivery. Ready to take your podcast to the next level? Contact L. Connor Voice, LLC today and make producing your podcast as easy as hitting record. Links are in the episode notes.
So let's go back to the early days when you said you were taking investments from friends and family, and then people were noticing you and starting to reach out. Would you talk a little bit about how you did some of those deals? How were they structured? Were you also out there, just really boots on the ground, hitting people up saying, hey, I need investment. Did you know how much you needed? Were you just asking for whatever was available? What did that look like?
Yeah, there was a little bit of, we had a structure that we decided on. There was a little bit of trial and error, but But generally, we took a stabilized income, which we pegged to year three. And we put a multiple, on that. And so that's how, and then we assigned a value to the share. Like a Tap and Burger was like $25,000 a share. So, if it cost us $1 million to go out and build a Tap and Burger, which in 2024, it's well north of that in Colorado. But just for a round number, and we knew we were going to get X amount in debt and we were going to put some of our money in. And so say we needed to go out and raise $500,000, we have a $25,000 share value. So the math on that is that we're selling, 20% of the company. Right. So, and then, just, everything was subordinate to the debt, but distributions were dollar for dollar, and it was just a very simple, clean, way of looking at it. They own stock in the company, so to speak.
Okay. And how much were you willing to give away at that point?
Well, it was usually 20 to 30%.
Okay.
Yeah. So our model, I should probably, before we get too deep into that,
Mm-hmm.
We have a management company. So when we started to get a little bit more sophisticated, after a couple stores open, the management company basically takes 5% of the top line revenue.
Okay.
And that's where Katie, myself, Kevin, Max, and Hazem live, the 5 partners.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we get paid. We get paid the more sales we do, the more we get paid.
Sure.
There's a ton of incentive there. And we're creating value in that management company, right? That management company has no asset. So no liability, no anything. So the multiple will be higher on that. So that's just cash flowing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so then you have the equity at the store. And today, obviously, the equity is in the C Corp. But then it was just at the store level. And then when we restructured, the value of the equity was the multiple was much higher. So I think we were doing, depending on the concept, we did 3 to 3.5 times EBITDA, 3 or 4 EBITDA. And in the C Corp, when Grant Thornton, which is a large public accounting firm, came in and did our valuation, it was 4.8 to I think as high as 6x on the valuation of those of the store level shares, and so they do a little bit of a discount for lack of marketability because you don't have 10 of any concept or anything like that. And then they map it to, 25% of it, they map towards what they call guideline public companies. So they look at public companies in the category, see what they're valued at. And the rest of it is discounted cash flow.
How did you put a value on the company in the early days?
Just 3 to 3.5 times 3 or 4 EBITDA.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's a fair number, for a one-off store. Because really what you're doing is your investors really more focused on their IRR and if you're producing, and we're producing north of 30%. So
what'd you base that off of?
It's so basically when you do a financial model,
Mm-hmm.
we would do a 5-year model, right? And really where what we had seen in our first couple stores was that year 3 is really when the business became stabilized. A lot of times restaurants lose money in their first year, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of figure it out and they kind of grow at that point. And then year 3, it's like, okay, this is what we are. This is who we are. This is our, what our product mix is. These are what our margins are going to be. So you have a much more accurate number. And through experience, you're able to kind of predictively model that. And so we take that 3rd year EBITDA number and we applied a 3.5x to it.
Okay. Got it.
So for example, if you were doing, $500,000, you just take in EBITDA, you do 500,000
Mm-hmm.
times 3.5.
Okay.
And the number could be 2.5, 3, 3. Whatever. It's an inexact science, but
Mm-hmm.
but the justification is the key, right? It's like, so if I'm asking for 3.5x, what is my investor getting in return for that?
Mm-hmm.
If their IRR is high, then that's a fun investment for them.
Okay. And then will you talk a little bit about when you made the decision to put the management company in place and why you made that decision?
Yeah. We put it in place when we opened Sloan's Tap and Burger. So that was at that point, then we were at 3 stores. We had opened 4 restaurants, but remember we had moved on from Old Major. So we had Highland Tap, Pardo, and Sloan's Tap and Burger. And so we put the management model in place. And just, to kind of tell the market, hey, we're going to be incentivized to grow financially. So that's when we did that. And then in 2020, we added what's called an employee leasing company. And as you grow, I would strongly recommend that because you put all your employees in one bucket. That's where their paycheck comes from, right? And you are now going out to market to negotiate benefits and 401ks and any sort of thing for your employees. Instead of negotiating as a 30-person restaurant, you're negotiating maybe as a 300 or 400-person company, right? You're going to get a much better rate.
Got it.
So you're trying to take advantage of economies of scale there.
Okay, got it. Will you give some tips to the listeners here that are starting their investment journey? How did you know where to look? How do you know when you found the right investor? What can give the listener some direction around that?
The thing with that is, I think there are various approaches to that. My personal approach was to be very visible in the community and really understand who was in my restaurant and get to know them personally. So it just happened organically. And so when you're small and you're busy, everybody wants to invest in you. Every single person you talk to is like, "Oh, can I invest?" And 75% of the people, never will. Even go beyond that conversation. And then the other 25%, 20% of those will get to the goal line and not do it. And 5% will say, "Yeah, man, I want to put some money in."
Got it. What are some of the big mistakes you made when you first started looking for investors?
Probably, it's your partners are really important, and I think, when you need money, oftentimes you can kind of justify maybe taking some money from somebody that really shouldn't be a part of that business.
Yeah.
So I would say that's number one. Number two would probably be undervaluing ourselves. And especially as we were getting into 7, 8, 9 stores, we were really providing a lot of value. And we provided a lot of value, in the form of deals that we were getting from developers who wanted us, from public relations, from our community involvement, not really understanding the value that we were giving to big real estate developers. And so I would say those are the big ones. Other lessons learned outside of the financial piece was I think most restaurants fail before they open. Even if they open and they operate for a year or two, they had no chance because they don't understand construction. It's still probably our weakest link right now, and we're just not. None of us are construction people, so that tends to cost. Those mistakes tend to add up.
Mm-hmm. How have you been able to help your restaurants be successful from years 1 to 3?
By being there and investing in good leadership.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that, one of the things we loved and a lot of the reason why we came to the restaurants so often, I mean, yes, the food was great. We loved that whole, area, but we love seeing the same leaders over and over and over again, right? We built relationships with your managers and they all, really spoke highly and still do about you and the organization. And what I love about them is they're never running around like the dining room's on fire. They're always comfortable. They're confident. They, just as when you come into the restaurants and say hi, and every time we were in there, you'd come up and say hello. I don't know if now I should feel slighted that you didn't ask me for money, but I'm just kidding. I didn't
We're
have it.
about to open up another round of capital raise.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I still have some chances. But no, they really emulate the same qualities, right? And they'll come spend, not too much time with you where they're ignoring the guests, but you really can tell that they've got the finger on the pulse of what's going on in the restaurant, and they're always present. They're not sitting down, they're not in the office.
We're a company that works, right? Work-life balance is a pretty dumb concept. It doesn't mean
You're talking to a mindset coach, my friend.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know how you quantify that, but I think the one thing about our industry is that people love it. And if you can figure out a way to make it your career and take care of your family, the fact that you could do something that you love so much and that you're so passionate about, it's never work. If I was an accountant, I'd be trying to be a great accountant. I'd be working really hard to make as much money as I can to go out to the best restaurants and go to the best wineries and go to the best events, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Now we do that for a living. But the biggest thing is you have to have a strong set of core values, and you have to talk about them a lot. And those values, your management needs to be able to, whenever a situation comes up, whether it's something on the floor or something with an employee or something with a guest that's external, before they reach out to you, they should be able to look back to that document and the answer should be there. This is how we do things. This is how we treat people. This is our value proposition, right? This is our take on making mistakes. For us, it's like, go ahead, we're more concerned with accountability than we are with the fact that you made a mistake. Communicate up, not down, like those types of things, So, your core values are just like wildly important, right? And they become more and more important as you scale because culture is the hardest thing to maintain.
Yeah.
Right now, our biggest challenge is that we have CCG and we have 14 concepts, and we want the concepts to feel autonomous, but they're still CCG employees.
Yeah.
Right. So how does that relationship work? So that's like a huge struggle. And if you're not paying attention at store one to that stuff, you're going to fail at some point and it's going to hurt.
And do you feel like the core values are really that glue between the
100%.
management company and the concepts?
From employee, from the dishwasher to the line cook to the GM. Yeah. I mean, everybody has to be, aware of what those are, because that's your expectation. I think people really struggle when they don't set expectations and don't follow through on enforcing them,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, in business, I just did a talk at the Clayton Hotel in front of 40 or 50 CEOs and entrepreneurs the other day. And, I had always had this philosophy that, like, look, you're going to have some A players, you're going to have some B players, you're going to have some C players, you're going to have some D players, right? And usually your C and D players, I'm like, you focus so much. I mean, these guys are killing me. They're costing me money. They're not doing their job. They don't give a shit about anything, whatever. And all of a sudden one day I woke up and I said, that's not my problem. My problem is my B players, not my C and D players, because my C and D players typically fall off. My B players, who could be A players, but choose to be B players, are killing my culture. Right?
Yeah.
And when we identified that problem, when we started working and saying, hey, and by the way, it's okay to be a B and a C player as long as you're willing to improve.
Yeah.
But the complacency, hey, I turn my phone off at 5:00 every night, no matter what's going on at work. Right? I mean, it's probably not our culture. If you're behind and you need to improve, ultimately the outcome is what matters. Whether you do it in 20 hours or 60 hours is irrelevant.
So what'd you do with those B players?
Well, we've invested heavily in training and development. We have an organizational development person now. And as you know, in Colorado, we have some significant challenges in terms of labor and cost of labor. And so it's hard to, back in the day, we would be training on a weekly basis in the store. We'd just like bring people in an hour or two early, get them lunch and train. You can't do that in Colorado anymore. So you have to rely on sort of like, train the trainers, so spending a ton of time with our leadership, our directors, and then, helping them really develop the general manager level, and then the general manager level is developing the AGM level. And then during service, having kind of ongoing, training. And then we have Opus that we downloaded.
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with that. And
Had
we do
Rachel on the show. And I've introduced her to some other concepts in Denver, and they're loving the platform.
Yeah, it's a great platform. I really like it a lot. So,
Nice.
but if you don't, the challenge is, it gets harder and harder and harder to justify training your people due to the cost of doing that, and especially in the restaurant business that has such a slim margin. But if you don't do it, that's even a bigger risk.
I love that you're making that investment. I love that you also talked about some of the sacrifices it sounds like you've made because of the labor costs, and how you've kind of restructured that training. That's great.
Yeah.
Will you speak a little bit to just, how you're developing yourself and your mindset and how the mindset that you have has really contributed to your success?
Yeah. There's a couple components to that. I think travel, and that sounds sexy and fun, but really immersing yourself in other cultures. I'm a big believer in three main tenets: empathy, emotional intelligence, and intellectual curiosity. And I really want to see that in my leaders. And I think if they have two of the three, I think they can still survive here. But all three, I feel like we can turn into really rock star operators and leaders, and whether they stay with us or go do their own thing. I'm very proud of the people who have left and opened their own places because they've learned at ours. But travel is a big part of that. Really understanding, because we communicate with people, but we oftentimes forget to put ourselves in their shoes,
Mm-hmm.
and really striving to understand different cultures, the history of their cuisine. How many times you hear, oh, that's not authentic. Well, what the fuck is authentic? I mean, nothing's authentic. I mean, there's been tribes going here and influencing, and it's crazy. What's authentic is where you buy your food and how you treat your guests. That's where I've, and so I spent a ton of time doing that, and that really helps our conceptual development as well. The other side, which is probably the more common answer, is you got to surround yourself with people who just are very, very, very radically honest with you, and frankly that are smarter than you. And so my mentor used to always tell me, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong fucking room.
Yeah.
I think Confucius might have said that, maybe minus the F word. But I think that's a very true statement. As well as looking at yourself in the mirror every day and thinking about who you're spending your time with. Who are the 5 people that I'm going to see the most today, and is that adding any value to my life?
Yeah.
So those are really hard things, because there's a lot of fun people out there that are really nice people, but that are dragging you down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but I have an incredible board of directors. I lean on them a ton. I have great partners. I lean on them a ton.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that's the large portion of how I'm developing myself.
How do you find your board of directors?
So it's Katie and myself, and Hazem, who are partners in the management company. And then there's Matt Joblin, who's a very prominent real estate developer who's partnered with us on Aviano and Forget Me Not and iPoppy. There is Lynn Doherty, who is a just legendary tech exec. Was with Cisco, not the food company, the tech company, as a senior executive. McAfee, Sumo Logic. Just super high powered, very intelligent, but very empathetic. Frankly, somebody that I like to emulate. She's great. Todd Herrick, their family has been an investor of ours for a while. They're out of Telluride. They own Helitrax, and which is a heli-ski company, and Gunnison River Farms, which has Black River Anglers. So they have the two kind of marquee outdoor experience things in Colorado. But they're deployers of capital. They invest in hotels and companies and things like that. And they're fellow New Englanders, so we had that commonality, and we spend a lot of time together. Some of their kids have worked for us. And then a non-investor is Janelle English, and so she is the chief. I don't know what her title is right now. She runs Sony Studios in LA.
Okay.
She's married. She happens to be married to my best friend, but she was the chief legal officer for the Discovery Channel. And we, as much as we like to say we're in food, we're in entertainment.
Yeah.
And so to have that expertise on there,
That's awesome.
is great. So we've got a Fortune 100 board for sure.
Yeah, I love the diversity. Just really thinking outside the box from every aspect of the business. That's great.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I think, if we had gotten off this call without mentioning the importance of diversity, I think that would have been a fail. So
yeah, I love it. Is there anything else you want to mention about the group, or let people know how they can find you?
We're at culinarycreative.com, and our restaurants are all there. They all have Instagram profiles. I'm JPod16. It's been 30 years or so since I've been an athlete, or maybe 20, but I still keep my number attached to my name.
Love it.
So people feel free to give me a follow. Direct message me if you have questions. That's fine. I'm always available to really anybody. Hopefully, if you find yourself in Denver, Colorado, you reach out, and if I'm in town, I'm glad to have a coffee or a drink or show you one of the restaurants.
I love it. Juan, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your story and just being vulnerable and transparent about the business. And I think there's so much value here for restaurant owners to think differently, and just wish you all the best on your continued success for sure.
You're the best. When are we going to see you again?
I'm hoping another 6 to 8 weeks. So I'll let you know so we can connect next time I'm in town for a workshop or to visit some more clients. So
awesome. You're the best.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Juan. All right, everybody, be sure to share this podcast with any leaders you know in the restaurant industry. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.